Well, hi everyone, and welcome to season three and episode four of Behind Your Eyes. Today's guest is Abby. So, hi Abby, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Hi everyone. My name's Abi Wormell and I am a holistic life coach and I specialize in helping people manage their stress, build resilience, and avoid burnout.
Mm, especially needed in these times.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always start the series with a sincere, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm very busy at the moment with lots of sort of different projects relating to my coaching, but everything is really good. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, just trying to sort of keep everything going, keeping everything juggling all at once. But
mm.
yeah, I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Very good. Yeah, I'm
Excellent.
I'm happy and healthy, and that's all that matters.
Yes. Yeah, counting my blessings there. Yeah,
Yeah,
happy and healthy family.
yeah. And before you were a coach, you were a care worker, working with people that had mental health struggles and learning disabilities. And what was that like, especially in the COVID times?
Yeah, it was COVID was very difficult. So
Mhm,
I done that role for so I managed five different care homes, and they were, yeah, children and young people who had sort of difficulties and different diagnosis. It's always been quite a stressful job, so it's
mhm,
obviously very fast paced, at times quite unpredictable, but I
mhm,
I did like that about it. I loved that, being able to make a difference, and feel like I was doing something really worthwhile. But COVID was really tough.
mhm,
I think it was incredibly isolating to be
mhm,
sort of one of the only people on my way to work, driving on
mhm,
empty roads. And obviously the levels of sort of anxiety that were present for, both myself personally and my staff team and the people that we looked after, trying to explain some of the changes to young people with various difficulties and learning difficulties was very challenging.
mhm,
And I think that it made a tough job a bit tougher.
mhm,
And obviously, we had a lot of issues with staff contracting COVID
mhm.
themselves, and then needing to be away from work. So there were sort of like additional pressures in terms of staff shortages, which, yeah, it was difficult, and it absolutely sort of tested my resilience, and I think the
Mhm.
resilience of my teams as well.
Yeah. So how did you cope with all that pressure?
Well, I think for me personally, I was almost sort of running on
Mhm,
cortisol and adrenaline,
mhm,
and during the actual sort of the first lockdown, when things were really sort of tough with where we could go and what we could do, I think at that point I was pretty much living within my care homes just to
mhm,
kind of sort of provide that support and be there with the staff and the young people. So at the time, I think I was kind of not managing it particularly well by sort
mhm,
of pretending it wasn't happening, and being the sort of strong one for the people I looked after and
mhm,
for the teams of people I managed. And I think it was after the pandemic, so when things started returning to normal, that I kind of realized, ooh, I'm not okay, and
mhm,
I'm really sort of struggling with this sort of these feelings of, well, I mean, I think I was told it was depression by my doctor, but I
mhm.
never quite felt that that was the right label for me at all. And I think that upon sort of further discovery and some coaching myself, I recognized that I was actually sort of dealing with a very acute burnout.
Mhm. Yeah, because from what I understood, you were misdiagnosed by doctors, and it's
Mm,
yeah, unfortunately, it's quite easy to be misdiagnosed, unfortunately,
yeah,
especially in the stressful COVID times where it was, oh,
absolutely.
you're depressed, or oh, it's stress, or oh, it's easily overlooked that burnout can be a very serious thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, so how
definitely.
did you go from there?
Well, I had seen my GP, and he was quite convinced that it was depression and had prescribed me some antidepressants. I had put up some sort of argument with him that I felt there were, whilst there were some symptoms that sort of perhaps crossed over, so that kind of finding things less enjoyable, things that I used to enjoy became, a chore, and I didn't feel very motivated. So I think I could sort of see where that was coming from, but I also wanted to have some talking therapy. So I was on a waiting list. I think there was already waiting lists before the pandemic for mental health support in the UK, and then I think to add the pandemic and everybody's mental health sort of be worse, there was a huge list, and I didn't really want to wait any longer because it was beginning to sort of impact my day-to-day life and functioning. So I was doing a bit of sort of research myself, and I came across life coaching, and to me it just seemed it was like very practical with very sort of like goal and action based sort of steps towards making yourself feel better, as opposed to just the talking or just medication. So I obviously, it was something I had to sort of invest and pay for myself rather than through our healthcare system, but I wanted that support almost immediately rather than waiting. So I was lucky enough to find an amazing life coach who, it was a real penny drop moment for me to recognize that what I was going through and suffering with was burnout as opposed to depression.
And how did that healing journey start from there? What did that look like?
There was a lot of sort of talk, and my life coach was amazing in that she gave me that sort of safe space and that container to kind of let everything out that I felt emotionally and really kind of start making sense of it, which was a journey, actually making sense of my emotions and processing them through another person, sort of asking questions and really kind of holding a bit of a mirror up to myself, really, so I could kind of like self-reflect, and I could see sort of patterns in where my work-life balance was completely sort of out of kilter for a while, and just it was incredibly supportive. But there was also a real, I think it appealed to me as quite a practical person. There were real kind of tangible steps and goals, so I could go away from a session with an idea of what I needed to do to make this week a success or this week better than last week. So I really felt like I was making progress, and I had somebody there to completely utterly support me and to sort of be my cheerleader when I needed it, to give me motivation when I couldn't find it myself, and just to learn some really good kind of tools and strategies, really, to kind of not just manage the anxiety and the stress and the burnout, but also kind of just to, I guess, help me grow and help me become more emotionally aware, help me kind of really make sense and process what I'd been through on a personal level, and what how to kind of make sense from that.
Sometimes we need someone else to actually hold that mirror in front of us and create that awareness of what's going on inside of us.
100%, yeah. And that's absolutely what my fantastic coach was able to kind of do, and to have practical steps to come away from was just so beneficial for me, because I felt like I was taking action, and therefore I started feeling better.
Sometimes those practical tools can be so handy, because you feel that you're actually taking part in your own progress.
Yes, absolutely. And that's very much what I needed.
Yeah. And now you help others who have like burnout symptoms. And can you tell me a bit about what you do now?
I do. Yeah. So obviously working in the care industry, I think my passion and my sort of skill had always sort of been around helping other people. And I had been doing that job for sort of 15, nearly 16 years. And I loved it. And I still sometimes miss it. But for me, as I sort of climbed a bit of a career ladder, it became obviously a little bit less about that delivering that hands-on care, and a little bit more about the kind of running of a business. And I struggled with that a little bit. I much preferred the sort of face-to-face interactions with people. So because I had such an amazing experience coaching, and because I kind of went through the acute burnout and the real difficult time through to something so positive and actually being stronger than I felt I was in the first place, it kind of gave me a bit of an inspiration to, actually this is a way that I could help people.
Mm-hmm.
And step away from what I'm doing now and be able to kind of make a real impact to other people still. And for me, that's really satisfying to be able to do that and actually use my experience to help somebody else. And that has been what I then sort of went off and trained to do. So I did that whilst I was still working, and became an accredited life coach. Learned loads along the way, learned loads of sort of tools and techniques to be able to kind of give other people that practical help. And I slowly sort of built my business up on the side until I was able to make this my full-time job, and it's immensely satisfying, and I really, really enjoy it.
It's a very fulfilling job, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And getting to sort of interact in one-to-one sessions or small group sessions again, and really, for me, feeling like I'm kind of able to make an impact is very rewarding.
And have you seen a shift in how people view mental health and how important it really is?
Absolutely, yeah. I think because I've worked kind of in a care industry, I've always been quite aware of mental health issues myself, and I've had quite a bit of training around it. So for me, it's always been something that I think I've been very aware of. But I think as a society that we are eventually sort of destigmatizing mental health, praising and rewarding people who actually go and try and help and help themselves and ask for help. I think that that we've come on leaps and bounds, and I think in a way because the pandemic affected all of us in some way, shape or form, I think that it's unfortunately become quite common to have struggled with some form of mental health issue, whether it was pre-pandemic or because of the pandemic or the after effects. So I think as a society we are moving there. I still think there's a lot more that we can do, and I think that kind of improving services and improving sort of personalization, because I think that there's no sort of like one size fits all kind of solution for mental health. And a lot of our services, as fantastic as they are, they kind of they want to put you into a particular program, and actually that's not as personalized as it could be.
Yeah, it's still a lot of putting people in a box, oh, you're depressed, you need this, or you're burnout, you need this, instead of okay, what's going on in your life, and what were you struggling with or still are struggling with, or what is your past like, your childhood like. There's so much more going on than a specific label that is put on you.
And I think looking at that holistically is where we need to get to, taking it on an individual basis, as opposed to kind of, like you say, trying to give someone a label and then treat them in a certain way.
Yeah. And do you also think that people that work in the mental health industry, from doctors and so, do they need to learn more about an approach like that?
I think it would be immensely beneficial, because in my experience, and I guess this is just from a personal perspective, I didn't feel like I was treated particularly as an individual. I think I was seen, I was prescribed some antidepressants despite my sort of protest that I felt there was something else. So and I appreciate fully, having worked in the health and social care sector, how busy mental health professionals and GPs are. So I think there's a whole bigger picture there. But I think having a more personalized approach with things other than just counselling and medication would be really useful. A holistic approach that kind of takes into account every part of our well-being and every part of our lives.
Yeah, and in other episodes of Behind Your Eyes, I've also spoken with people who either work at schools or have experience with, teachers that don't really help the kids as much as they should, because they're either disobedient, and they think, oh, they're just disobedient because that's what they're like. But maybe they have, a lot more things going on, and even at home as well. So I think it's also the same for teachers.
Absolutely. It's almost a kind of, from the ground upwards, I think. Some teachers are not equipped to manage that, and we're not equipping our children to manage their own mental health. Manage. I think there's work that schools do around managing emotions, but that they are what we would call your normal range of emotions, as opposed to anything that falls outside of that when there could be a sort of mental health issue going on. And just teaching our children and our teenagers much more about how they could look after their own well-being, look after their own mental health, would be an incredible starting point, I think.
Yeah, especially after missing so much social events and creating more a bond with other kids and teenagers, that they had to miss out on a lot. And I think the effect will come in maybe even now, but also in a year to come, that they will have a lot more trouble like expressing themselves in the correct way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, of course, but
yes, it's I think it's taken its toll on sort of all people, hasn't it, of any sort of age group. It's different impacts, but it's certainly been monumental.
And is there something that you still struggle with on a mental level?
I would say that I think I see mental health as a sort of quite a spectrum. So I think it's quite normal for us all to have really good points and really bad points and low points. So I think for me, sometimes I feel like the issue of burnout has gone, and that's being managed, and I've got some really excellent sort of strategies that have helped me. And there was a lot of kind of compassion that had to go into that, and sort of self-compassion. But I think that stress and anxiety are still things that are present in my life. I feel like I'm much better, and I don't think I would ever leave it to be to get as bad as it did before. But I think it's normal to have some level of kind of stress and anxiety in your life. Not good stress, not stress that makes us be productive and achieve things, sort of that negative stress, but being able to manage it. I see it as an ongoing, almost like a maintenance program, how we would maintain our healthy bodies in terms of exercising and eating right, and going to the doctor if there's something wrong with our bodies. I see mental health being more like that. So you're not fixed and you're not broken. You're on a journey, and even when you're feeling in a good place, there's maintenance that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I've talked to people who have had burnout but are not like in that space anymore. But there's always a fear of going back to that place, of overstretching their boundaries, their limits, and falling back into the almost burnout trap, as I would like to call it.
Yeah.
Is that still something that you have in your life?
I think I am very, very aware of what that would look like if I started to kind of feel like that. So I don't want to say I'll never feel it again, because I might. And I wouldn't say I fear it, but it's always there, and I'm always I'm much more reflective now, so I'm able to kind of reflect on my limitations and know when perhaps I'm taking on too much, or when a certain few weeks have been really hectic and really busy, that I need to kind of perhaps pay a bit more attention to self-care and that kind of thing. So I think it's it's there in the background, and I can't say I will never do it again, but I think being able to recognize those early signs is really important, and sort of pay attention, be very aware.
And is it also essential for people who have experienced burnout or other like stress or anxiety to recognize what your triggers are?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's so important, because it looks different in everybody, and I think there's some really interesting work that you can kind of do, whether you do it on your own or whether you do it with a sort of a coach or a counselor, where you can kind of have a look at what really explore what those triggers are, by kind of looking at how you react in certain situations. And once you understand yourself and your triggers a little bit better, I think it puts you in the best position to be able to manage those situations, because they're not going to go away. I think, you know, life is stressful, but
Mm-hmm.
being aware of what they are, and being able to kind of like recognize early signs of any kind of you know, mental disorder or any kind of like issues, just being able to really know what your triggers are like, and what you can do at that point is incredibly useful.
And what is like your favorite, if you can call it favorite technique that you use to calm
Ooh,
down and ground yourself?
I think simple breathing exercises are fantastic, because you're able to you don't need anything to be able to do it. Your breath is
Mm-hmm.
there at your fingertips, if you like, and you know, you can pretty much use breathing techniques in any given situation. So if you're, you know, if you're in a workplace, or if you're in your car, if you're at home, it's quite a subtle kind of thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I quite like the square breathing, or 4-4-4 breathing, where
Mm-hmm.
you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you slowly release your breath for 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
It's very subtle and discreet, but it does kind of trick our nervous system into into kind of, you know, going back into an unwind, sorry, mode, as opposed to you know, that hyper awareness. So we
Mm-hmm.
can kind of, you know, almost trick our nervous system a little bit into being calm. And once we can do that, I think our ability to think through the reality of a situation that we're facing is much better than reacting from a point of stress. So I think being able to pause, and
Mm-hmm.
breathing exercises really help me pause, and then I can mindfully sort of choose how I react to a particular
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yeah, I always say your breath is your anchor. It's like your safe place you can always return to.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And I say, you don't need any training or any skills or any equipment. It's just there for you.
Yeah, you just need yourself.
Yeah.
And do you have any other ways of self-care that you do?
I think self-care looks quite different to different people. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, physical exercise is a really important sort of part of my self-care. I feel a lot more focused and resilient and motivated when I have done exercise, usually in the morning. So I make sure I prioritize that. I make sure that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of part of my day. And I think for me, kind of my social relationships are also really sort of important.
Mm-hmm.
So making time for that kind of connection, whether it's with my partner or my friends, or my son. So you know, it's about kind of discovering what your own sort of
Mm-hmm.
self-care looks like, and then prioritizing that, and making sure that you have enough of it in your day or your week.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also important. I tell people who are at the start of their healing journey, it's like, okay, you have to forget about others, be selfish for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
focus on you and what you like, what you love, and put that more into your life.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. Yeah.
essential for your mental health to create moments
Definitely.
in your day that you're happy. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And trying to incorporate a bit of mindfulness as well. I think that really helps. Mindfulness was something I really struggled with, actually, in the beginning of my kind of journey. I, you know, you read about it so much, but having a very switched on and busy brain,
Yeah.
I found it quite frustrating, if I'm honest, in the beginning. But I did sort of persevere with it, and I do find that I do try and sort of spend a couple of minutes here and there with my day, just
Hmm.
being really mindful of my surroundings, and appreciating it. And journaling as well has really
Hmm.
sort of helped with that sort of gratitude practice, and
Hmm.
you know, really sort of grounding myself in, you know, even when there's been a rubbish day or a stressful day or a difficult day, that there is something that I can feel grateful for, and having
Hmm.
that written down to look back at as well is, for me, has been yeah, a real sort of key component of
Yeah.
kind of maintaining my self-care, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just discovered, if you can call it that, discovered the power of forgiveness, but also forgiveness of yourself.
Mm,
So on a
yes.
daily basis, I tell myself I forgive myself for mistakes I've made or for not seeing my worth, and
Yeah.
I've come to feel how powerful that really is. And the same with gratitude. If you can find,
Mm,
even if it's just one thing or a person or moment in your
Yeah.
day that you are grateful for, it can change your whole mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once we start doing that, we are so much better equipped to kind of feel like we're balanced and feel like we've kind of got a bit of control and positivity in our lives. And that
Mm-hmm.
for me is a really good protective factor for my
Mm-hmm.
mental health.
Well, I can also understand, on the other side, when you feel very overwhelmed with negative emotions, that it can be
Mm.
hard to say like, I have to find something I'm grateful for, but I'm totally not in the mood for
Yeah.
that right now. But that's exactly
Yeah.
why you have to do it, of course, because
Yeah.
if you actively look for something to be grateful for, you see
Yeah.
more and more to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And I think there's a really interesting kind of like I suppose it's like a sort of scientific or psychological sort of phenomenon that's the negativity bias in our brains. So
Mm-hmm.
we're sort of programmed, and it comes from kind of like a primal safety instinct, but we're programmed to remember the bad things, remember the
Mm-hmm.
difficult experiences or the frustrating experiences, and not pay as much attention to the good ones. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a really good example, and I heard it explained like this once, was if I went to the airport today to catch an aeroplane and I missed my flight,
Mm-hmm.
I would be telling everyone about it. I would be moaning. It might go on social media, or I'd be phoning my family and my friends and be like, "Oh, I missed my plane. I can't believe it." Whereas if I went to that airport and just got on my plane
Mm-hmm.
and the plane went left and it left on time and everything, there would
Right.
be no story. There would be nothing to share. I wouldn't tell
Right.
anybody, "Oh yeah, I just got on a plane and it went fine." So we share and we connection seek through like negativity and negative
Mm-hmm.
experiences sometimes. And I think
Yeah.
it's really important to sort of try and counteract that a little bit by
Yeah.
being really mindful of the things that we did go well and that we can be grateful for.
Yeah, because even in social settings, usually, people love to gossip or vent, and it's always
Mm,
on a negative note.
yeah.
You
Yeah. Yes.
hardly
Yeah.
gossip about in positively about someone. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's all like in the mindset we have to change.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And what is the best advice you were ever given?
Oh gosh. I think the best advice I was given would probably be about preempting obstacles. So we I think that we kind of like think that once we decide we're going to do something,
Mhm.
whether that, like a new healthy habit or a new self-care routine, we kind of think, well, I've decided I'm going to get up really early and go to the gym tomorrow. So I know I'm going to do it. And you don't necessarily like prepare yourself for
Mhm.
the fact that your brain will probably, when that alarm goes off, it will sort of make an excuse for
Mhm.
you to stay in bed, or actually a little bit of sleep will do me better. And we just don't think about it like that. We don't kind of like think that, and our brains work against us. So I think a really good sort of bit of advice I was given was about kind of thinking through what the obstacles are
Mhm.
once you decide you're doing something, or once you start a project or start something, is kind of like being prepared for how you might try and talk yourself out of it. And
Mhm.
once you've got that kind of narrative, that script to go back to yourself with, then you're able to kind of overcome that. So that to me was quite a bit of a game changer, really,
Mhm.
because for a long time I was stuck sort of quite in a quite negative sort of cycle with the burnout and the overworking and the
Mhm.
not paying attention to all of the warning signs. So to kind of now know what to preempt, I think that's been really
Mhm.
useful for me.
Yeah, because it's fascinating how our brain works and how our ego or our fear just wants us to, stay away from change.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're hardwired, aren't we, to sort of feel
Yeah.
that change is going to be scary, and it's, I'm not saying it's not, but it's there are so many, we can't grow without change, can we?
Yeah. And even if it's a positive change, then still our fear or ego says,
Mhm.
are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember having that sort of internal battle with myself when I started with the coaching was, you know, uh, are you sure you want to do this? You're gonna have to really talk about things. You're gonna have to
Mhm.
invest in kind of like your own well-being. You're gonna have to really dive deep and talk about some uncomfortable emotions. And I remember thinking for a while, it'll be easier just not to do it, just not to do it. Even though I know I desperately needed help in
Right.
that period of my life, I did try and talk myself out of it, but thankfully was taught myself back into it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's sometimes the hardest part, because when you want to change, like a positive change, people tend to still listen to that voice, like, I'm not sure, should I really do that? It's not too much work. What if I fail? And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
okay, just don't listen. It's not ego that's
Yeah,
talking you out of it.
absolutely.
Go for it. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Mm.
So being prepared for that, I think, really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, awareness is where it all starts, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, my final question, I always also have the same one. When are you at your happiest?
I would say when I'm experiencing something or somewhere new. So I love to adventure. I love to sort of like discover and be outside. So I think for me, that's really key for my well-being. So being somewhere new and being with like friends or family and just taking on a new experience. I like high adrenaline. So
Mm-hmm.
anything sort of anything with water or heights or anything like that, that's my happy.
Mm-hmm. That's your happy place.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's not everybody's happy place, but it's certainly mine.
Yeah, that's definitely not mine.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, but yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Well, thank you so much, Abby. It was wonderful to talk to you.
It was wonderful to speak with you too. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.